When we head to the Motor City, this is a place among many places where people say that this was the birth of the autocar. Of course, when Ford found themselves in with the Model T back in the 30s, this was a place of pure joy. This was a place which brought everybody together. And you would argue at this moment in time, the streets just on the outskirts prove to be very much the same. This is a tough circuit. This is iRacing's version of Monaco. And here with the Global Sim Racing channel, we bring you the Flying Husky Racing races here today with the Cadillac and, of course, the Dallara P217 back-to-back with action today from the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle. Welcome to the party. Welcome to the conversation. Welcome to everyone getting themselves involved. I'm Jake Sperry. Joined alongside with me today is Cy Andra, Zach Johnson on the cameras here, with those cameras provided by the legendary Dougie Beard, as we take a very, very good look at where we are today. Cy, the Motor City, Belle Isle. This is tight, twisty, difficult, and often finds itself in retirement central.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody thinks of street courses. They think of Long Beach. They think of Monaco. But Belle Isle has its own unique character, being in the middle of, well, a park. So you have a little bit of street circuit. You have a little bit of wide open. It's wider than most street circuits for certain. But for no doubt, for cars as big as the CADILLAC CTS-V and for cars as fast as the Dallara P2, it's going to be a unique challenge.
And that unique challenge is one that we're definitely going to be seeing today. Two different vehicles back to back can often be a very difficult race around this very, very tough circuit. 3.78 kilometers, 14 turns worth of racing action, and one which is going to be very, very difficult. Massive shout out though has to go to Norsled, ladies and gentlemen. Norsled is a non-profit animal welfare organization dedicated to rescuing, rehabilitating, and finding homes for unwanted, abandoned, and abused husky dogs. Today, every Flying Husky Racing track day or car event benefits Norsled with a portion of the proceeds donated to them. Even if you can't adopt, you can still help and ensure care for these amazing animals through your support. So save a husky, and for more information, you can contact Todd Curtis through email with todd@flyinghusky.racing. And also a shout out to the Flying Husky Racing group in general, which is a car club based in the Pacific Northwest that delivers premium track days and car events for automotive enthusiasts. FHR is dedicated to safety, development, and building community among members and participants. You can find out more on the web at flyinghusky.racing. Flying Husky Racing, of course, track days are the best days. And with it being the best days here today, we need to talk about the details about what we're doing today. Cy, take us through.
Well, two 25-minute races today, one in the CADILLAC CTS-V, as we see here, and then another one in the Dallara P217. Detroit GP is a 2.6-mile, 4.2-kilometer street circuit, as Jake was telling us earlier. 13 turns, and it's going to be very interesting. Not a big field here today, about 8 cars, but the qualifying looks close as we're coming towards the end of the practice. So we should have a 15-minute qualifying session coming up in this CADILLAC CTS-V.
We certainly should, and it will be interesting to see how these times all work out. Drivers up and down the order will be looking around themselves, seeing how practice has gone. Of course, practice doesn't necessarily determine who is the quickest and who is the slowest. It's more of a gauge to say, how much are you putting out there on the table? How much hand are you willing to show in this sort of race? So let's take a little look then at this track guide to see just how important this circuit is, this wonderful track here of Belle Isle. This is a incredible track as we just get to the start of qualifying. Hopefully we can move on forward and see how these drivers figure out. But Si, you know, this is a track which is unique in many senses. Not often you get a track that jumps up and over a river and goes around some very, very iconic sections of circuit. Most often seen, of course, when it comes to the NTT IndyCar series.
Oh, absolutely, and we've seen a couple of IMSA series and a couple of endurance races around here, but it is known for that IndyCar race, as you said before. And you wouldn't normally think that IndyCars would fit around a circuit like this, but they make it work somehow, and that's the entire sort of lesson this track will teach drivers. Make it work. This, no matter what you do to the setup, no matter what you do to the car, this track is bumpy and it is unforgiving, especially with those walls, as we see in the background there. It is not easy to keep this car out of them. So, like you said, qualifying is going to be important. It's not easy to pass around here. The main passing zones into turn 2, maybe turn 3 at the end of the long straight. That's going to be the biggest one. If you can get a good draft over that bridge, sort of keep it out of the wall. That's what this track is definitely known for. As we infamously know, the driver of the NTT pace car wrecked there a few years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you absolutely do, and he just so happened to be one of the bosses at General Motors as well, which made things very difficult. First lap time then about to start from the 382 of Nick Horvath as we look a little bit further down the order here at, I believe this is Michael Broomhead making his way through the 711 complex out here on track. That is turn 11, and we're going to gear up then for a flying lap with Michael Broomhead and see just how difficult this Belle Isle circuit is going to be as a challenge. This is turn 13 going through right now, and that small kink right puts the end of the lap, and now it's all about this charge in one of the oldest vehicles on the iRacing service, the Cadillac CTSV. Only 140 yards on the run to turn number 1. Very difficult, slightly missing the apex then on both sides. You've got to try and gather that momentum through 2. Be very cautious with the wall on the outside, and this is the longest charge that you will have on this lap over towards turn number 3. On the brakes, traditional of a street circuit, it's a 90-degree right-hand bend as you try and go through, and we see just how difficult it can be. That is a spin there at turn 3. He's going to do a nice 3-point turn to get that back, or a flick spin there at that case, and able to get things gathered up again. Will have lit up the rear tyres heading towards 4, 5, and 6. This, of course, one of the tighter sections of track where it's very easy to take a little bit too much out of this section side.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, he heated up those rear tires, so he's going to have to go nice and slow on this second lap here. Now, as we see cars going around the track, he's not the only one to have spun so far. I've seen Hans Salnov, Gene Hawks, and Michael Broomhead have their own little bit of a spin as well, as we see there on screen. It's easy to spin these cars. They have traction control, but it's not the high-tech traction control that you see on the GTE cars or the GT3 cars. The Cadillac isn't nearly as sophisticated electronically in that sense. It's very, very simple ignition cut, which means even though the traction control will kick in, you can still easily loop the car if you're not delicate with your right foot.
There is Nicholas Collender supporting a car which looks more like one of Guy Fieri's shirts at this stage, moving on through turn 5 into 6. Now, this is a devilish corner, turn number 6. It's off camber as you go through, as you make your way onto Strand Drive 1, and the charge moves on forward then towards turn number 7. Out on track, it's winding straight. You turn and brake almost at the same time. You can see 400-meter board he was going to dive at here. 7 is such a narrow section. It narrows up further into 8. If you haven't got the move done here, then my goodness, are you in for a bit of trouble. Car off there on the right. They go through 9. A little bit of sliding there from the rears. They pass the Scott Fountain on the right-hand side through 10 into 11 here. Tight section. You can make a lunge there if you are very, very brave. It has been done before. You can see moving up only to 107 miles an hour for the right of 12, which is surprisingly more tight and narrow than you think. And then that final right of 13. Tony Roma then putting the first time on the board in the number 55, a 1:34.525 out there on track. Colander then making a drive to the line and puts a 34.495. So already you can see how close it is in qualifying. 300ths the difference out there at this stage.
And it looks like it's going to get closer as we have a couple more drivers coming to the line to set their first flying laps. We have, I think Colander just finished his flying lap, but I don't know if he's going to come back in or not. I was expecting for drivers to do one flying lap and then pit, so maybe these guys know something that I don't about these tires. They're going to stay out and do 2 flying laps back to back and then possibly reset.
Well, if you keep an eye on track conditions, that might just be one of your indications. In sim time, we're about 10 to 9 in the morning here as Nick Horvath puts a 3-second time quicker than anybody else, a 31.4 Broomhead. 0.3 of a second behind. You can see it is 73 Fahrenheit out there on track, 69 Fahrenheit in temperature. So it tells you it's a cold track to start things off, and that means that those tires are maybe not being as punished as they would do in hot conditions.
You know, and that would explain some of the early spins we've been seeing on the outlaps. The tires just aren't up to temperature, and that makes us, that makes me a little bit worried for the start of this race, especially through the short pace lap and on the start. These cars don't have tire warmers from what I remember, so the drivers are going to have to do a lot of work on that short pace lap to get the tires and the brakes ready for turn 1.
I tell you what, it'll be even more difficult with the fact that this is a machine that does like understeer, and when it does hit that level of grip, when you're trying to find it, it puts bucket loads of oversteer in, and it's the fronts of these vehicles which get very, very fragile in the engine. So you've got to make sure you're keeping the front out of the wall, because they do have a tendency, these Cadillacs, to go kaboom at certain points. That is going straight on there at turn 7, not finding anything. And hey, look, it's a car, loads of puppies on it. Clearly, it's the fan favorite immediately that just goes on by, moving on through. That was Nick Horvath getting past Todd Curtis out there on circuit. Curtis right now on a 39.6, just dialing it up, trying to get it up to speed, as Horvath then put a 34.4 down on the board. Not quite as quick as maybe earlier laps are, but this is where we're seeing drivers think about their strategy. We're about halfway through qualifying in the next 30 seconds or so, and this is going to be a very, very difficult challenge for them in the early goings. When that track as well, due to the temperatures and drivers running on it, gets a little bit hotter, as it is doing right now, this means it's going to be a little bit more tougher side to get more time out of the track.
Oh, absolutely. And going back to what you talked about with the front end of these cars being rather delicate, they do have a fast repair here, so they do have a spare car that they could use during this race. But this race being only 25 minutes, if they do have to come into the pits to get the spare car, that means they're effectively out of the running for the win. So that's not something they want to be banking on for certain.
Of course, 25 minutes minus 10 minutes. It's a 15-minute race that we've got in the mind at this point in time. And what will be key as well is that they don't have one fast repair around this one. I think they've got a fast repair almost for every single lap they go by. They've got 6 of them.
Well, that's well, let's hope we don't have anybody use all 6, because that'll be a bad day for them, that's for certain.
It certainly would be a bad day, and all of this is effectively emulating a track day, and you'd feel that this is about making sure that everyone's nicely there together and getting all those times in on the board. Top 3, as things stand, it's Horvath, then Broomhead, then Colander, your top 3 as things go. Hawks and Salnav yet to put a time in on the board. Gene Hawks has not gone out for a single lap in the 4.58 for qualifying. Hans Salnav is out there on track right now, just getting everything up together, then going through the right of turn number 3, just taking it a little bit pedestrian right now, just almost like this is a cycle lap, just making sure, yep, that's a corner, we're working out exactly where we need to be, moving on through into the next lefts and rights. And this is a track which it is very easy, and I would say, well, easy to get wrong. You'd say here, Si, this is a high intensity style circuit where mistakes need to be at a bare minimum.
Oh, absolutely, and that intensity forces driver mistakes. Often you've seen a lot of guys here go straight on, missing the corner, just kind of making small mistakes, outbraking themselves by maybe not even 10 feet, 10 meters even. And you'll see that, especially through this section here. I'm not a fan of this section personally, as we ride on board. This is very tight, not forgiving at all, especially when you have somebody right behind you. It's easy to go a little bit deep into the corner, and the track is very low grip out here. As look at Nick Horvath swings out wide and tries to do the over-under here, and he gets side by side. This looks like a race. This doesn't look like qualifying, does it, Jake?
No, it doesn't, and this is just the disparity between the drivers right now in terms of pace, and that's what happens when you're being pressured by drivers behind, and there is an element of just how fragile that car is. One nose into the wall, look at that engine smoking around, and that will be a case of, can I get my lap done? You are going to be putting oil all over the circuit, and that will be a tow back to pits for Hans Salnav. And this is what makes it such a brutal car-track combination. Not the fact that this track here, Si, is necessarily the worst, as Broomhead here puts a 31.388 down on the board, goes faster by 400ths of a second in the 00. It's not necessarily a case that this is a track which is bad out there on circuit or isn't designed to be brilliant for racing. It's just the fact that you've got a car that likes understeer and then on top of that likes oversteer and is very fragile.
Absolutely. This car does have ABS, so we're not expecting to see a lot of tire lockups here, but that ABS can lengthen the braking zone by a considerable amount if you're not careful. This is not the kind of ABS you can mash to the floor and be stupid with, kind of like with some of the GT3 cars that people are used to driving. The Cadillac is compared to a GT3 car a lot of the time, but it honestly isn't nearly as sophisticated. As you said, plows like a dump truck on the entry of the corner if you're not careful, and it will snap to oversteer again if you keep the wheel in it. So that's what these drivers are competing with right now. And it's going to be who can tame the understeer and who can tame the rear on exit, especially with the amount of power this car has. This is one of the best sounding cars on iRacing, so I'm looking forward to hearing that engine note when we go on board.
I tell you what, it's one of the louder cars in iRacing as well. There's a reason why Cadillac have put a pretty sizable engine in as they make the charge through to 12 and 13 here. This double apex almost that you feel has a few similarities, say a reverse of the Ravazza corners over at Imola, as there's a 3-car pileup on the back stretch between Salnav and a couple others there. So Todd Curtis getting caught up in it. Broomhead again going even quicker, an extra 10th and a bit. It seems like this is going to be a shootout here today in this 15-minute race between Broomhead and Horvath, as they'll be looking to go through, and you're just seeing how tough it is. But they are now in that crunch time mode when it comes to qualifying. They've got themselves 3 minutes and a bit of chump change you can add on top of that, and this is where you really get that focus, you would say, Si, in qualifying. One lap, one opportunity.
And it is stressful around this track because, as you know, in iRacing, unlike real life, if you tap the wall, that does invalidate your lap. You get that contact 0x. So unlike in real life, where you can kind of lean on the wall a little bit if you need to, you don't get that luxury here in iRacing. So you have to be careful, especially as we see Gene Hawks coming through the latter section of the lap, coming into Sector 3. I believe he's on an outlap, going a little bit slowly here. And I believe we see Nick Horvath is on an outlap as well. This is his last opportunity to try and beat Michael Broomhead, and I think Broomhead is on a flying lap right now, coming to the last sector right behind Gene Hawks.
Yep, so Gene Hawks has yet to get around to start a flying lap, and that will be his first attempt. He's on.
Broomhead Rex.
That's a heavy hit there from Broomhead. He was really trying through that 12th corner, and just like that, under the Casino City Bridge, he finds himself with the tow, and that will be that, unless he can get himself out and around in the next 30 seconds. One of the keys to this is open qualifying here, Si, which means you are allowed to finish the laps you start.
Yep, he has to get going. He's still in the pits on my screen here, so I think he may have called it for this qualifying session. Nick Horvath, however, is on a hot lap, as we see on screen here, coming to the corner where Broomhead wrecked. So we'll have to see if Horvath decides to push harder. He has nothing to lose at this point. He has to find 2/10 to get pole position. Coming through that right-hander, you can see the nose want to push a little bit. You can see the rear want to get a little bit twitchy on the exit there. That looks good to me as he comes to the line. Let's see what this lap time is.
Horvath then making the charge through 14 on Sunset Drive, and over the line. That is a outlap then for him. So this will be the attempt for Nick Horvath. He's got to make sure that this one is absolutely perfect as he goes through. Broomhead won't get a time, nor will Doherty, who has decided that he's fine on a 35.6, nor will Todd Curtis as well. Only Colander, Hawks, Roma has words. Oh no, Horvath's in the fence there at 3, so getting myself a little bit mixed muddled up there with a few words. There at 3, Horvath then will not improve. We focus then on the 4.58 of Gene Hawks, making his progress then to 12, and if anything, this has to be just keep it on the island.
We're looking for his first completed lap here, so this is going to kind of tell us where he's going to be in the middle of this pack. We have Michael Broomhead and Nick Horvath in the 131s and low 131s, and then a little bit of a gap to Colander and Roma in the 132s and 133s. So he goes through turn 1 there. He sets a time of 1 minute 44, so I think he may have had a little bit of a half spin there on that lap, or he had some sort of mechanical issues, because that is not the sort of pace that this car can produce around here.
Well, it certainly isn't. I'd say that's a banker lap, if anything, just to make sure that there is a lap around this circuit. There is Colander as the checkered flag comes out then here with GSRC and your Flying Huskies. As here goes Colander, looking to improve, needs to find a second here to jump up ahead of Horvath, and there goes the second and a bit more. A slide there that goes into the tyres, and a 2X going through will put an end to that one going through. Hansel Nav does cross the line, puts a 42.4 down on the boards. That is good enough then for 7th position, and that ultimately leaves only one driver remaining here in qualifying, and that is one letter off of a legendary Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Tony Romo. It's Tony Roma who is making his way now through into the 7-11 complex here, through turn 8, nice and tight, nice and neat. And then you got 9, 10, 11. He's off of Colander, who's seen him made that mistake just in front of him over the course of this lap, and he's very aggressive over that curb, almost too aggressive there going through. We'll have Gene Hawkes just in front for the final couple corners, so he'll be a little bit alert to that as he tries to slide it on through 12 and then into 13. You can see half of the track then on the outside is normally parking during the day, so it doesn't normally see much rubber on this track, but there's the drive to the line, gets a bit of toe for help. 32.611 was not able to find as much improvement as was needed. That then brings everybody over the line apart from maybe Sal Nav, who still has the opportunity to improve on a 42.4, still needs to find about 5.4 seconds here to find improvement to reach Todd Curtis. This is a very tricky and peculiar track, and I'm sure as well there'll be that element of drivers trying to figure out, okay, do I need to practice for this Cadillac, or would I rather practice for the Dallara around here, which is a completely different beast around this place. But here goes Sal Nav making that push over towards the line. How much improvement is there going to be? The answer to that one then is a no lap over the line. So what we can do for you, ladies and gentlemen, is go over towards our starting grid then for this one at Detroit and see where everyone is going to line up then for this 15-minute race coming up on the horizon. So with that said, it is the 00 machine who has every reason to be excited with the results that have come along through qualifying. It is Michael Broomhead on pole position with a 1:31 there, 0.289, clear by only a couple tenths over Nick Horvath in second, and Nicholas Colander lining up third. Tony Roma will go from fourth with James Doherty in fifth and Todd Curtis sixth. Then it's Hansel Nav seventh, and Gene Hawkes rounds out the 8-car field. Has very much a League of Champions feel, or Race of Champions feel about this race. And 15 minutes isn't a long time by the stretch of things, but if qualifying was anything to go by, this is probably a race about minimal mistakes.
Absolutely. Broomhead and Horvath, I think, are going to be the guys to watch out for if they don't take each other out in turn 1. Or turn 3 rather. Turn 1 is a quick right-hander followed by a quick left, as we saw. But turn 3 is the big one where we see people dive it up the inside, go 3 wide, all that good sort of racing. But if Broomhead and Horvath aren't careful and they touch a little bit, Colander and Roma are right there to take advantage.
Well, care is definitely going to be necessary because of the pace lap that they will have. They've got 2 minutes to grid up behind the iRacing Porsche first safety car. And with all 8 now on the grid, the pace car will now be set into motion. Drivers will be able to select that first gear as they sit in sim right now, and will be able to take that pull away off of the line behind the safety car and hope that they can get everything nicely up to temperature as they push on forward. Track temp still remaining exactly the same, so no real differences there. 73 degrees Fahrenheit is what they have to deal with at this moment in time, but it's all about that drive The pace car will take its dive right here into the lane. Control will be with Michael Broomhead on the inside, which is crucial, and he takes that jump early. Green flag is up in the air, and we are running and racing here at the Motor City into 1 and 2. Nice and calm everyone's going through in the early stages. They don't want to be involved in any form of incident, but already Horvath is around at turn 1's exit. And just like that, too much curb, grabbing the grass on the inside. Demoted he is to the back of the field.
Now we got to see how much damage that car has. It doesn't look too bad, but that left rear has definitely taken a big hit. The rest of the field filing through single file. It doesn't look too bad at the moment, but I think this is going to be a big recovery race for Horvath.
A recovery race indeed. The lead then for Michael Broomhead. He's got exactly what he wants off the start. One of his nearest rivals nowhere near him at this stage, as on to Strand Drive 1 they go along for the first time. You got Colander there in second, Roma in third, Curtis fourth, and there goes Salnav in fifth position, and the engine is completely shot. They're back in fifth position. There you can see it smoking away, coming out of sixth, just spinning it into the inside, then the outside. That's the dramas, and Salnav taking a tow.
Unfortunate. So we have two cars out on turn 1. Well, not out, but one car taking a tow, the other car limping back around. I think Horvath may have to take a spare car this race. Unfortunate for him. But Michael Broomhead, strong first lap, but I think Collander's keeping him honest at the moment. He's not pulling the gap that I expected. And if he's not careful, I think Colander might have something for him at the end of these 15 minutes.
Yeah, so Colander looking to cook up a storm then in that number 8 machine as they make that drive over the stripe. First lap then, score complete. And the key about this race is that it's time limited or time restricted. When they do reach 15 minutes, that's it. That will be the last lap of the race. They will race to the clock, and then anything over the top of that will be the key. Also, you got there in third position just behind Tony Roma, keeping himself nicely in company as they make their way into turn number 3. This is going to be a race about honesty and a race about how much you can keep the driver in front side honest.
Actually, pressuring and intimidating the car in front is half the battle, but that's only half the battle. Like I said, the other half is making sure that you don't go into the back of the car in front, or that you don't get so distracted, get target fixated on the car in front of you, that you go into the wall yourself. It is a double-edged sword, especially when you're trying to get and put pressure on the car in front. And oftentimes that leads to a little bit of gaps as the driver around street circuits like this have to sort of spot their apexes, and they can't run nose to tail like they do on regular GP circuits.
No, I'd certainly agree. This is a tough circuit to follow in behind. You do need a lot of skill to be able to do that, though. So there is second and third, Colander and Roma. Roma looked pretty good, and that was a little bit aggressive into turn 11 there from Nicholas Colander, and that is allowing Roma in the 55 to start maybe making a push forward and getting very close. He is, of course, a chief engineer at CADILLAC, is Tony Roma. He is based actually not too far away from Detroit, so you could say home field advantage in the sim. And as we all know, Si, if you've got home field advantage in the sim, as Michael Broomhead sets the fastest lap of the race, you get a virtual 2/10 advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And look at this. Roma is running him down, coming down the straight into turn 3. I don't know if he's close enough to have a look, but he's certainly thinking about it. Oh, he brakes a little bit early, trying to make sure he leaves enough room, doesn't go into the back of Colander like I was talking about earlier. But this is a good battle here. He's sizing him up. He doesn't have a lot of time, but he doesn't have to rush either. He has the home field advantage, like you said, but he's also putting pressure on Colander. I think Colander is starting to crack a little bit as he misses the apex there, coming to the corner before the back straight. That looks good. So it looks like Roma isn't going to have a run, but if he keeps doing this, and I think Colander is starting to crack under the pressure here.
Well, you're starting to see just how easy it is to find drivers behind who want to try and force a way through. A lot of moves done in iRacing are actually done by not making mistakes, and look how wide you go. That completely neuters the run, but of course there isn't much of a drive from turn number 7 over to turn number 8, so that completely brings things into perspective, and you can't really get that much of an attack. Maybe out of 11 you got that chance. All the meanwhile, this checking up and battling is allowing Michael Broomhead to canter off into the distance, nose to tail through turn 12. They go along again, and really Tony Roma wants to try and make his way through and gain another place.
while we're looking at this on board from Tony Roma's perspective, I can confirm that Nick Horvath had to come into the pits and take his spare car. So he is a ways back. He's back down in 7th place. Unfortunately, Hans had to retire. But, or rather, he's on track. He is out there. Thank you. I thought he had retired, considering he spent almost 2 minutes in the stall before he left. But back to the battle that we see on screen. Again, kind of denied into turn 3 is Tony Roma. So its time is running out. We only have 9 minutes left, so we've gone through a third of the race already. Broomhead has been checking out a 5-second gap from first to second here, so this is the closest battle we have on track at the moment.
It certainly is. We were almost treated to a battle between Todd Curtis and James Doherty there in 4th and 5th position, but that gap has opened up due to the traffic there of Salnav getting himself back out and away again. Had to wait a long time because of the tow on the back stretch, so obviously that truck had to be a little bit quicker. Nick Horvath, though, is feeling like being 57 seconds down right now on the race leader. Fast lap of the day for him, 1:32.3. As he goes through, he'll be trying to run down Gene Hawkes, who is 16 seconds in front of him. And you know what? He may just be able to between now and the end of this race at this stage. Back, though, to that battle for 2nd and 3rd. Colander versus Roma. And you can just see how it's just that waiting game that Tony Roma wants to play. Doesn't want to risk the car, especially knowing how fragile it is down the inside, until it's absolutely necessary, side.
And Broomhead responds to Nick Horvath setting the fast lap with a 32 flat. As we look here, Nick Colander goes a little bit deep into turn 1, but fixes that with a good run out of turn 2 down the straight.
Doherty.
So it looks... Sorry?
So I've just caught an eye on Doherty, who's down in the pits. We just had a flick forward for that for about half a second. Doherty has found the wall all on his own, I think, going through turn number 8. He caught a tank slapper with nowhere to go at 9.
Unfortunate. So this track is starting to, well, basically knock people out of this race one by one. Like you said, self-spins and simple driver errors are the biggest cause of attrition around here, and any street circuit, but especially here at Detroit because of the low grip surface, which is kind of what sets it apart from, I'd say, Long Beach and Monaco.
It certainly does, and this is not the easiest surface to go out there and race on. It's why it's one of the more difficult ones on the iRacing calendar as they go through. That battle still continuing out there on track, as will be the battle going on then for 5th and 6th position in this race, which is just about to meet its zenith here, because Horvath has found the back of Gene Hawkes, hits the brakes into the right, and Gene's got no corner apex speed. He gets a punt through the corner there from Nick, who was really not expecting that. And for Gene Hawkes, I think he's just desperately trying to make sure that he is getting something through the corner. If anything, just scrubs a little bit wide going through 5, and I'm sure Nick's going to have to be very, very patient here through 6, line the run up off of the exit, and this is as plain as sailing as it gets.
Textbook over-under on the exit, and he's pulling away from Gene Hawk, gives him plenty of room, and I think he's going to easily outbrake him into the next quarter. No response. But the battle up front continues between Colander and Roma, and I think, as Roma gets really close into turn 3, I think he scares Colander a little bit wide. They're trying to get into his head a little bit. Common tactics on street circuits. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, so you often see scare tactics, and this is the sort of play side that you would say you need to go to what every sim racing driver quote-unquote has, which is the sim racing playbook. You go in, you brake late, you try and scare your opponent, you get wide in the mirrors, you try and do everything. I'm waiting for the point where he decides he wants to flash the headlights. That's probably the last thing that you start thinking about, but every trick in the book comes into play as you go on through these rights and lefts, and it's always a case, especially at a street circuit, where you have to lean on the playbook more than other places.
Oh, absolutely. And looking at this battle, I'm starting to see a pattern. I think Roma is so deep on the brakes. He can brake so much later than Colander, but Colander gets much better exits, and right now it's working for him, as Roma can't brake deep enough to get alongside him, and Colander just gets the good exits so that he can't draft back past him again.
Well, this is the thing. He's got a really good 13, and now here comes the chance then for Tony Roma as he looks to try and figure it out. Sunset Avenue over towards 1. There goes the lunge, late on the brakes on the inside. They come together through the corner. Colander was never going to let him have that. He shut the door firmly. This is Touring Car Style Racing, tries to cover it off on the exit. There goes Roma straight on through and up into second with a wonderful overtake. But can Colander respond back on the brakes in towards 3? We know that Roma is the last of the late breakers, but it's time for Roma to find himself with one very nice touchdown into second.
And that was perfectly timed with 5 minutes to go. They only have 3 laps left in this race, according to my calculations. So Colander needs to mount an attack now because they don't have the time to sit around and wait for them to come back together naturally.
And of course, he'd know and understand everything about this Cadillac CTS-V. He would understand it a treat over at the Cadillac factory, and he will be someone who is definitely thinking about this one. The race lead has extended out to about 9 seconds at this point, so that one may be a little bit too far to find between now and the end of this race. But what we can definitely say at this point is that this has been one which has been all about calm and consistency, and to make a move like that, to see how aggressive these two were going at it, knowing that they were putting second and third on the line their side, that was one which you could argue that, you know, you take a little bit of bravery around here to start banging door to door.
Absolutely, and like you said, it was classic touring car racing. They bang doors, but it doesn't really damage these cars too much, as delicate as they are. They can lean on each other a little bit. I don't think either of them mind, so to speak. It's not open wheel racing. You're not going to launch another car off your wheel by doing that. And I think he left the room. I will honestly congratulate Colander. He didn't cut Roma off across the nose or anything like that. Roma showed his nose and Colander left a little bit of space, and he could have been more aggressive on the block coming out of turn 2, but again, he didn't. As they're coming up to the back of Gene Hawks here, a lapped car. Looks like Gene is going to move off to the side of the track, getting blue flags.
Yeah,
oh, and that's an awkward position. And that does hold up Colander a little bit.
They do get through, so that is at least one saving grace, but on the inside of the apex, that's another thing for lap traffic. It's so difficult to let drivers through around this place. You've either got to wait for the straight, or you've got to get well out of it, which is very tough to do when the track really narrows up. So they go down Strand Drive and look at that focus towards the next right and left out there, and it's almost a race against the track. For those out in front and those behind, that's the only battle we got right now, Roma versus Colander. Everyone else, you would say, Si, is in that hot lap mentality, which is very easy to get yourself into a rhythm, into a pace, but also very easy to almost hypersense your own mistakes and faults.
Oh, absolutely. Like, even the great drivers, like the greatest in the world, actually. I think I saw an anecdote from Ayrton Senna when he was racing around Monaco and he had his accident. The greatest drivers in the world can turn laps within a tenth of each other, lap after lap. But when they need to pick up the pace or back off, that's when mistakes happen. And I think that's what these drivers are starting to see. When they need to change that pace, whether they need to attack or defend, which makes this battle even better, honestly, because neither of these guys have made a big mistake yet. So honestly, very impressive from these two.
Yeah, the gap remains within a second, so there'll be a little bit of help from the fringes of the draft for Nick Colander out there as he looks to try and keep honest Tony Roma out there in second. Michael Broomhead, of course, at the moment, you would say, is cleaning things up quite nicely. The gap 9.9 seconds, now 10.1, as you can see on the screen, and only increasing at this stage. And this has just been the consummate professional drive. Get out there in front, don't get challenged too much, and then when you have that gap, you maintain and extend. Doesn't matter if it's a minute or a mile, that is a lead, and that will soon be, at the end of next lap, barring, knock wood, any mistakes, everything that's needed. But the bragging rights on as the fastest lap, they're back in Horvath's lap.
Oh, and as Nick Horvath does that, I saw Tony Roma, right as I said they weren't making mistakes, Tony Roma did go a little bit deep on that corner, coming off the back straight there, but it doesn't look like... Oh, and Colander goes around... Oh my God, what a save. That was excellent. These cars are not easy to save when they get that sideways, so hats off to Colander for not looping it. But his rear tires are going to be warm, and I think that puts pay to any chance of a battle we had coming to the final lap as Tony Roma comes to take the white flag.
That was a wonderful save by Colander. You knew the moment he was going around through 11, he needed some help to bring it back together again, and he did just enough for that work that was going on through. This is the final lap then of this race. They will not be able to cross the line and put another one down on the board. Colander still within a range of Roma. The gap 2.5 seconds, so Roma can't sit down and be comfortable just yet here in this one, but you'd argue at this point in time that Nicholas Colander, he tried everything. He threw the sink at turn 8, nearly got in the grass going through that corner, but ultimately pays for the one small mistake, and it might just only be a third here in this first race. To Michael Broomhead, who is just after this heading himself now into the 7-Eleven complex. You can see there is Tony Roma in second position, looking to try and make that progress forward. Horvath again lighting the boards alight, another fastest lap as he goes through, but only a couple corners remain now for Michael Broomhead, who has just driven a completely safe and clean race, and he has done exactly what he has needed. Give him as long as a handle as you want, 13 seconds, 30 seconds, 100 seconds, it doesn't matter how much, because Michael Broomhead in the 00 will come to the line and take a lights to flag victory here with the Flying Huskies in a GSRC event for you. It will be Tony Roma making that drive to the line then in second, and a great attempt by Nicholas Colander to stave him off, but ultimately wasn't quite enough. A podium it is indeed.
Oh, as Colander goes a little bit on the grass there in celebration of his podium, trying to get a little bit sideways for us and loops it into turn 2. Well, showing his wheelman skills right there. Doesn't go around that time either.
Fourth. Look at this, it's not over for fourth. Nick Horvath has caught onto the back of Todd Curtis, and Curtis is in real trouble. Look at that front right, the wheel exposed. Front left, wheel exposed. He's in trouble, and he's got to be really, really narrow through these final couple corners. Run the middle of the road, try and get a drive off the exit. Horvath trying to look up and under here, and I'm not sure if Curtis has got anything. Horvath is going to steal fourth at the line. What happened there to Todd Curtis late on? Because he was nursing that damage. He had him leading on to the final lap about 16 seconds. He put it in the wall at 3. That's where it all fell apart.
That's a good catch, Jake. I did not notice. I had written off Horvath in 5th place, but like you said, a good driver never gives up, and he claims 4th place. Not the finish he was looking for, certainly. He had the opportunity for the win, or certainly had the pace for the win, but it's going to come up just short of the podium.
So let's get confirmation of result then up on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen, here on YouTube with the Global Sim Racing channel. Michael Broomhead picks up the win then in 15 minutes and 30 seconds and a margin of victory of 13.7 over Tony Roma then in second place. It's Colander who comes around with third position then with Nick Horvath in 4th and 5th place, ending up in the lap of Todd Curtis. James Doherty would finish off in 6th with Gene Hawk 7 and Hans Salnav 4 laps down in the end, only managing to pick up 8th position when all things were said and done. We're not going to be a million miles away then from the next race jumping on the books here with the Global Sim Racing channel, but at least in the meanwhile, we will be able to bring you a couple of driver interviews for you at this stage, which is going to be very, very good as we're going to get things going. We're going to go through the top 3, at least at this stage. Mike Broomhead picking up the victory overall. Mike, lights to flag. That was a pretty confident race that you can be quite happy about. Mike, have you got us there, buddy? I believe.
Yeah. Sorry, my computer was messing around. Are you there?
Yeah, loud and clear. So a lights to flag victory for you. How good is that to make a good start of things tonight?
Pretty good. You know, if you watch previous races from this series and others, I've been struggling quite a bit, making a few too many errors. So I just wanted to keep it clean. Obviously, a brick of a car, but fun. You know, it's got some good power V8, and it's got a little bit tail happy, so just being gentle on the gas and the brake, and thankfully, you know, unfortunately for Nick, he spun early on, so that gave me a little bit of a buffer.
Well, the buffer was there. Let's talk about how difficult that Cadillac was here today, because you've got a car that likes understeer, also has a tendency in cold conditions to loop it around, and very fragile with the engine. Did you feel like the way that you were going to try and conduct this race was all about safety first and then bringing together that final result?
Yeah, exactly that. So the first few laps, I just wanted to get around the track, make it clean, get the tires warm, just give myself the best opportunity to then hopefully push a little bit more. I pushed a little bit more, but obviously it didn't get close to the qualifying time. That wasn't the aim at that point. I had a little bit of a margin there. So yeah, it was just keep it clean and just bring it home, really.
And bring it home you did. Now we're moving over to the Cadillac, or the other kind of Cadillac, the big beefed up Dallara P217. So you've got a car which is a lot quicker, a lot more difficult to handle around here for many different reasons. How do you think it's going to feel as you try and bring yourself into that next level and transfer from car to car?
I don't know if you can hear me. I seem to have lost you.
Oh, that's a real shame. Well, how are you going to handle with car to car changing from a Cadillac to a P217?
Got you loud and clear now. Yeah, so I've driven the P217 a lot more than the Cadillac, to be honest. So I'm a little more comfortable, but around the streets of Detroit, it's going to be a little bit tricky. Just before the session, we did some laps with both cars just to just to get used to it again and just get our eye in. But it's going to be as randomly drop in as the first one. So we'll see how it goes, and it'll probably be about survival as well.
Of course, here a victory for you. Any shout outs, any sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank picking up victory number 1 on tonight?
Well, hopefully that's number 1 of 2, right? Yeah, thanks to the family, to Mimi and the girls for watching, but also to MRM, Mountain Range Marketing, lisaslight.com, and of course Flying Husky and yourselves.
There you have it. Mike Broomhead picking up a really strong and powerful result there with that victory. Si, I believe that you have found yourself a Tony Roma who has come across the line in second position after what was a wonderful battle.
Absolutely. Tony, do you have a copy?
I do. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely. Great job getting past Nick Colander there. That was an exciting battle to watch. We were on you basically the entire race. Well done. So we've heard that this is your home track. So tell us about how you prepared for this race and in this car.
Yeah, this is my home track, as in I live in Detroit, but I didn't really do anything to prepare. I don't usually drive the Cadillac very much. I race in a lot of other series, and so I just pretty much logged in, and here we are.
Well, I mean, that's the best kind of racing, drop-in racing. And certainly you were putting a lot of pressure on Nick Colander early in the race, but we saw you had a little bit of patience. You weren't pushing too hard. You weren't making a lot of mistakes behind him, kind of keeping him honest until he made a little bit of an error coming onto the front straight, and you managed to dive it up the inside. Were you kind of waiting? Did you know you had the pace, or was that very opportunistic?
I was surprised I had the pace, to be honest, because he outqualified me. A lot of these guys did by quite a bit, and so my strategy was just to keep clean and wait for the race to come to me. And yeah, I noticed he was making some mistakes in a couple of spots pretty consistently, so I was trying to figure out. It took a little faith to send it into turn 1, but we did make a little contact there, but it was no problem. So yeah, it was really just a matter of waiting to see how the race unfolded. So be patient. Good things happen.
Well, you mentioned you drove a couple other cars. Is the Dallara P2 one of them? And what can we expect for this next race?
The only time I've driven the Dallara, I did the 24 hours of Daytona this year in the Dallara, so I got a lot of seat time in it at Daytona, but never driven it around Detroit. So yeah, we'll see. It's way different than the Cadillac, the CTSV race car. So
absolutely, and a lot more downforce than the Daytona spec car, yep. I'm certain. So yep. And the bumps around here aren't as forgiving in the P2 compared to the Cadillac, at least that's what I hear. Hopefully, you can give us a little bit more insight when we speak to you after the second race. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
There we go.
Good luck. Is there anybody you want to shout out? Any sponsors you want to let the audience know about?
No, just thanks to the V Club for inviting me out, and yeah, that's all.
Thanks for coming out, Tony. That's second place in our CTSV race here. Well, third place, I think we have Nicholas Colander, yeah.
I think we do as well. We're going to bring Nicholas Colander then into the conversation here. Nicholas, you had a really nice qualifying, put yourself up there in the order, P3. Of course, an instant very early on for Horvath put you up into second. So immediately from the word go, you're put into that mindset of, oh, we're in complete survival mode.
I actually get a chance to practice with Nick a lot, and so once he did his off you go mate, I had to lock in and represent the Knicks off jump. That's how we go. But I had a great battle with I believe it was Tony, and that was a blast. And I just couldn't keep it together at the end. He had a great pass. I didn't want to force the issue too much. I didn't want to cause a wreck. But just huge props to him. That was a blast today.
And absolutely, we saw the overtake, and you were not afraid to make sure that you were getting elbows out, so to speak, around the couple of corners. But just talk through that mindset of racing in a Cadillac. It's got that touring car feel to it as you make that drive around, and a car which is very, I would say, brick-like in exterior, but really something that's quite dainty and fragile when you get a couple bumps and knocks around this place. So really something that you'd say is almost a peculiarity to try and drive?
I mean, some background on me. I just kind of joined SimRacing, 3 to 6 months ago, and I just got into this, and I just joined the PRL Indy Pro. So I'm a Rust Racing guy. Shout out to Greg and Steve and the rest of the guys and Mitch, and they've been kind of grooming me, and the McDonald's and open wheel racing is kind of my passion. So this is a very huge transition with the weight transfer. And if you saw the wiggle at the end with Tony, he lost it. I could have taken him, but the way the weight shifts in this heavy car, this wide heavy car, things can go south pretty quick. So, I always err on the side of being cautious. That's just for me. But it's a blast to drive. The V8 engine, it rumbles. It's very rewarding when things go right. When things go south, it can really be punishing. But just want to shout out Mike Broomhead, what he does with his buddies, my buddy James for joining the squad, and Flying Husky for putting this together. And most importantly, GSRC, you guys put on great streams. And this is my first interview with you guys, and this journey's been a blast. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no worries at all. Very quickly before we let you go, Nicholas, we're taking that transfer over now to the P217, a very, very ferocious LMP2. What are you looking to expect from it? One of the first times that you're probably getting the chance to drive it.
Literally bought this car about half an hour before the race earlier. And I'm gonna drive it just like the Indy Pro. It's very similar in practice. I'm just gonna avoid hitting people. I assume it's fragile. We'll see how the cards play. You know how the cold tires go first lap, and we'll see who else spins out. See who gets lucky next race. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we will indeed. Nicholas Collender, what a wonderful character there as he put it third position in that first race. But as you can see on screen here, ladies and gentlemen, we do have the Cadillacs out there in force. 3 minutes, 30 seconds before we take ourselves over towards qualifying. Only 10 minutes of qualifying, so they have shaved off those 5 minutes, Si, as they move over from session to session. And that's going to put a little bit more urgency in as Tony Roma sets the fastest time in practice at 24.6.
Absolutely, and I think 10 minutes, even though these cars are faster, they're going to be about 5 to 10 seconds faster around this track, depending on track temperature and the like. So I think they're only going to get 2, 3, 4 laps of 2, 3, 4 laps flyers around here. So it's definitely going to be a bit of a pinch, especially if they're not careful on the outlaps to get those tires up. These cars have tire warmers compared to the Cadillac, so the outlap won't be as sketchy. But it does mean they're going to have to hustle on the outlap and make sure to get the brakes and tires nice and warm for the flyers.
And let's talk track temperature and tire temperatures at this stage, because we've moved from a morning style condition here, Si, to a afternoon or a noon style condition. It's about 12:30 we're hitting towards very soon. That track temp, 103 Fahrenheit in, I would say British, which I'm from. That's 39 degrees centigrade out there on track, which means that it is very much on the hotter side. And you'd say anything around 103, 105 Fahrenheit, that is on the hotter end and makes life very, very difficult.
Yeah, especially with the flash heating of these tires, which can easily happen if you slide or kind of lock up the tires, which is even easier to do. As low grip as this track surface is, making it hotter does not help. So you got to keep the tires cool. You got to keep the tires in their happy zone, and getting them out of their happy zone will lead to very bad things happening very quickly, especially in the P2, which is so reliant on its aerodynamic grip. And once the tires give up, that aerodynamic grip has nowhere to go, and it will loop you in an instant.
And this is a circuit where aerodynamic grip in terms of the styles of corners only really help, you would say, Si, at a couple of places. On the back end towards sector 1, that's the place you get it. That middle sector is majoritively, would you say, mechanical grip inspired?
Definitely mechanical grip, but the aero grip doesn't magically vanish when you're below 100 miles an hour. It's still there. That aero balance still matters. But like you said, mechanical grip is king around those parts of the track. And that is kind of the trade-off you have to make when setting up the car around this track. Do you set it for mechanical? Do you set it up for aero? And that will give you some pros and cons depending on which sector of the track you're driving. So, and that's not even counting for the fact that you have to have the ride height set higher than usual to get over the bumps around this track and some of the curbs. So it's going to be interesting to see what setup choices these drivers make here.
And those setup choices are going to be very, very important. We are just reaching the end here of practice right now. Horvath is on top again, a 21.444 in on the books. And it's going to be very weird to say this, but I'd actually expect this to be a closer field than it has been previously in that Cadillac race. Of course, the Cadillac is something that you don't really have that opportunity to go out there and practice too much. You normally see it in terms of the iRacing service as a car choice, really, you'd say, Si, that you only find in the mixed match and the rumbles along with the VW Jetta and the MX-5 and the Mustang that's all thrown in together for one club-style series. You look at this sort of car, you have so many different opportunities to go out there and race an LMP2. Mainly, you would say the European Le Mans series out there at Class A license.
Absolutely, and like we were speaking to Nicholas Colander earlier, he's an open wheel guy, and I think open wheel and prototypes have a lot in common with each other. Certainly, the cars are different, and just being inside of the cockpit of the car versus being open with the air outside in front of you in an open wheel car feels different, but they drive a lot the same. So, and especially if the car is set up safe, the aerodynamic downforce can help you around these tracks and not make it as vicious as the Corvette. But both cars have V8s, and I will say both cars sound amazing, so that's a big plus for the Dallara P2.
Of course, that plus comes in through X Audio 2 then, that has come in on the iRacing service over the last year, and so many amazing innovations and developments come in through the sim as things go. And that's one of the things that you've got to love about sim racing, is that evolving development as we are out there on our formation laps, or quote unquote our sighter laps out there at this stage. But Si, it's that evolving development. You've been around the scene for 4, 5, 6 years. You know, you're one of the drivers out there on track that, you know, I first get a chance to talk about and talk over when I was a plucky young teenager getting my first start. So really you get to see that evolution of sim racing and just how this gets a little bit quicker, a little bit bigger, a little bit better as things go on.
Absolutely. You've said that the Cadillac has lost its shine since it's one of the oldest cars on the iRacing service now. I remember when that was still the car to drive. I was around back then, so now you're making me feel a little bit old here. But it's certainly evolved, and the way you drive the cars evolved as the tire models have updated, the sound updates, what you're listening for as a driver changes quite a bit. And like you said, the X Audio takes it up to another notch. You can hear the cracks and pops, you can hear the floor scraping along the ground, you can hear sort of the tire rumble as you go over the edge, you can hear it squeal a little bit too. Especially with these big slick tires, you have to feel it, but you can hear it a little bit as well. It's not as obvious as road going tires which squeal and scream and let you know that you're pushing them too hard, but that's a little bit of the challenge, isn't it?
And also you get to see in with those helping aids, so to speak, in the LMP2 as well. There are going to be a lot of opportunities to go out there and get a little bit of help in terms of how you're driving. Of course, Dallara has a lot of elements which help as you hit the brakes and go into the right there at turn 7 as we look at Tony Roma out there on track. But, you know, you're always trying to be alert, and as he gets a huge slide, he was full opposite lock as he went through, as we just flicked on a little bit further in front there to Nick Horvath for a second. This is a very, very tough car, and you have a lot of aids out there to help you, and you can get so many different elements out there in the car, which gives you a lot more of an understanding of just what makes a car quick and what makes it very difficult. And you know, a car like this, which is very reliant on that downforce, you would argue you've got to drive faster to get the most out of it. Horvath fastest time at 22.3, first one in on the book.
Oh, and as you say that, Michael Broomhead goes even faster, gets about almost 7/10 faster than Nick Horvath there. So we're seeing a little bit of similarity between the Corvettes and the P2s in terms of where the drivers are sitting. Tony Roma still in third with a 1:25.8.
Yep, so a pretty solid time there, just getting up to speed as Roma allows through one Mr. Michael Broomhead as up into third position. Now goes James Doherty then into third position with that time. And now you flick through this middle sector, up the hill, through the right at 6, onto Strand Drive, this long sweeping section. And this is going to feel like a blur because you can reach some pretty high speeds out here on track. You can see those exposed wheel arches as they go through. Broomhead making that run through, hitting only 114 Ks, but immediately you're up at 150. It's got, for an LMP2, a lot of a hit, and this was the sort of car which you look at came in due to IMSA's work and wanted to come into the series, replacing, of course, that legendary HPD ARX.
And speaking of the difference between the two cars, this speaking of electronics between the two cars, certainly, the traction control on this car is much more sophisticated. It has 2 settings you can change, the lateral and sort of the longitudinal settings. So drivers will be able to mess with that to change the amount of bite they have out of the corner. But it is missing one big thing. It does not have ABS. So you will see drivers lock wheels going into corners, and it will not stop them from doing so. And locking wheels in this car, it is not forgiving at all. If you lock it, you'll have to come all the way off the brake, basically, and then back on to save it. And at this track, you don't have a lot of runoff to work with.
No, you certainly don't, and we have seen that time and again how a lack of runoff can cause a few incidents here and there. And once again, it will be that same 15 minutes out there overall in terms of racing action, so they'll have the same amounts of time to play with, so to speak, at this stage. But at the moment, you would say Broomhead quite happy, 0.666 ahead of Horvath there in second position right now. But drivers just looking to try and put their times on the board and just making sure they're giving themselves enough space. There is a lot to work with, and you would say, with the fact they're not really dealing with too much of the unknown here in qualifying, they're not necessarily going to be in too much trouble to find a lap. It's very difficult to search around this circuit, you'd say, side for a 1x incident point.
Yeah, it's difficult to get on the grass out here, but as we saw a couple of the CADILLACs manage to do it. But 2x for spinning and sort of the 0x for tapping the walls is what we're expecting to see the most, as Nick Horvath puts it on pole by a good amount, too. Look at that lap.
That's a brilliant lap. It's a 120.8. That is 3/4 of a second, nearly 8/10 of a second. Then on pole position, Horvath is not messing around at this moment in time, and it really is showing. Broomhead there just behind is certainly hoping that there is going to be some time available on the board there, and is trying to follow in the footsteps on this transfer section from 4 into 5. And that wall on the exit of 5 is so deceptive. It does jut out there through that section, and many a time you'll see a driver clip the side of that and find their race ruined.
Even in real life, you've seen drivers catch the wing on that wall and sort of rip it off by accident. That doesn't even need a lot of force. A couple inches to the left and you are done. Sorry, a couple inches to the right, you are done, rather. And it's certainly I think I saw. Was that a tap on the wall there? What do you think?
I'm not sure. I was a little bit distracted out there, so I'll have a double check and see how much of that it was. It was coming through turn 8, and that is a very committed corner there at 8, trying to make that run. That was right up to the wing mirror. I think you can get away with that in that sort of section. There are a couple cars which, if tall enough, if you put the rear wing over the barrier, so to speak, that will count as an instant point. But over the line, that does count as a lap, 120.506. And Michael Broomhead is proving that that is the sort of margin you need to go out there and push to work out where the lines are going to be, as the 362 pulls it off of the road then. Oh, sorry, the 382 there of Nick Horvath deciding wants one more run. So drivers looking to get themselves ready for that final run. This isn't going to be a walk in the park, but it is going to be a very tough drive, and what you would say is a Sunday night drive at this stage.
Oh, and as we see, the yellow car of, I believe that is, Gene Hawks. Gene Hawks setting a 1:37, 6th place at the moment. We still have Hans Sanalve and Nicholas Colander who have not set times yet. Hopefully they will, and I think Nicholas Colander still has time to give us, because I'm looking at the laps set. He has 3 flying laps on the board at the moment, but they have all been invalidated, so I think he has something to give yet. And I think the same thing of Nick Horvath here. He's been doing consistent laps. He's been doing 1:20s, 1:21s, but he has a couple of invalidated laps, so I think he has a little bit more time to find if he can push as hard as Broomhead has been doing so far.
Yep, so more to find then from Colander. Of course, we did see Gene Hawkes find himself a little bit in the tyres. He is, of course, the president of the Pacific Northwest Cadillac V Club. So he's got a lot of prestige that goes around. He knows quite a bit about Cadillacs, but at this stage, he has probably not had too much of the time to work out this. And what a very, very ferocious machine this is as he tries to fight himself through the corners. There is, of course, just looking a little bit behind Colander, making that charge over towards the stripe, and that one also doesn't count. So it's the final opportunity then for Colander to put something down on the board. 0.3 of a second, the margin at the front. Broomfield is out there on track. The only driver who isn't is Todd Curtis, who will stay in 5th position. But crucially, drivers now, Broomfield will not improve. So it'll be down to Salnav, Roma, Colander, and Horvath, of course, now in the final 45 seconds to get their one time remaining on the board.
This is do or die for Nick Horvath. Last out in qualifying, he certainly has something to prove. In the last race, he didn't have the pace to catch Broomhead there, but especially here, I think he might have the pace. He only has to find 0.3, and that is the same amount of margin, if I'm not mistaken, that he lost out to Broomhead in the last race. So let's see if he can get something done. So far, it's been a pretty good lap as he neatly jumps the curb there. It slots in nicely into 7-Eleven complex.
Yeah, Broomhead, not Broomfield. I'm clearly very, very tired at this point in time, midnight, my local time, as Horvath makes the charge through 11, nice and neat, coming out of the corner. Checkered flag is out then here in session, and that is key to the charge. Can it be all done? Horvath then really, really pushing to the limit. I think he's tagged the wall there through 12, and that will be a dive into the pits and no shade of improvement. So that will hurt. Roma, I think, just got around with the dying embers of qualifying still in the mix. So that very nice Golf machine is going to try and make that charge through the middle sector there at 6, and now that charge under the Pure Michigan Water Bridge and over towards turn 7, sweeping through Strand Drive 1 here on this very, very important island, the Motor City here at Detroit. And of course, iRacing are bringing more street circuits onto the service, and we're not a million miles away from that circuit at Chicago coming in. Back steps out then, coming out of 8, struggling with the mechanical grip, through 9 and 10 into 11 now, and trying to put the power down as much as possible. Making this drive towards turn 12 is going to be the key. Tony Roma is trying to give absolutely everything here on this final lap. It's 2.3 seconds adrift at this stage over Horvath and Broomhead, and out of time. Everyone has got themselves over the line, so wasn't able to finish it off. So grid, it's going to be as follows then. It will be Michael Broomhead on pole position, a 1:20.505, with Nick Horvath then just alongside on a 20.878. The difference in qualifying, just 0.3 of a second. Tony Roma will go from 3rd, with James Doherty there in 4th place. Good qualifying. Just getting to grips to the car then is Nicholas Colander in 5th, with Todd Curtis there in 6th. Gene Hawkes is 7th, and not setting a time is Hans Salnav there in 8th position in the number 6. So work then still to be done in this race. 15 more minutes are going to be put up on the board, and they'll be having that half a pace lap once again. Sai, what are we expecting here from 15 minutes? Because you've got a vehicle that is both easier and difficult in different ways.
Well, for one, I'm pretty sure Nick Horvath is looking to not repeat his mistake from the first race and trying to keep Michael Broomhead honest this time and possibly go for the win. He has something to prove. Tony Roma and Nicholas Colander are now separated by James Daughtry, as you said. So maybe we'll see a 3-way battle for the final spot in the position this race. Something definitely to look forward to.
Absolutely. So everything to look forward to here in this one going forward. Who has got what they need as all 8 up then on to starting orders, and they'll be looking to make that charge as they all make that drive. A lot of drivers with a very similar design. Of course, the iRacing base is very much there, and as they make that charge through towards turn 13, now that pace car will dive in, and once again, Michael Broomhead in control of the field will choose when to go, and he goes now, and look at that. Everyone getting a little bit caught out there. Horvath will realise on the inside is Tony Roma, but using a bit of that boost available, gets himself nicely through into that second position. A lot to play for here as they go through turn 1 and 2. Everybody nicely, cleanly through that section of road, and immediately it's the battle going on for third, because guess what? Round 2 for Nicholas Collender, going around the outside of Roma and getting it done.
What a move. Immediately goes past James Daughtry on the start. Oh, and we have an accident. I think that's Gene Hawks. I think that's Hal Salnave there. And to turn 4. Yeah, that is right. Looks like they just outbraked themselves.
Well, Hawks outbroke himself. Salnave was just trying to stay out of the way going through. Gene Hawks really struggling there in the early goings, but out front, Broomhead leads. Horvath then in second, and these two, we were robbed of that battle after 2 corners in the opening race in the Cadillacs. Here, it's going to be a different story, and how difficult is it going to be to try and make a move as they go through 8 and 9 and 10 into 11 now. Here, the next right-hander, and you've got to put the power down and stamp it down. This is going to be a tough vehicle. It's going to be a tough challenge out here. This is not going to be an easy drive through this Belle Isle circuit. And now with 15 minutes, we're once more settling down in. Horvath looking every which way like he wants to be the aggressor.
And look at this, Horvath is closing. He doesn't have a run into turn 1, but he's setting up for a possible run to turn 3. We didn't talk about it a lot in the Cadillacs because it wasn't really relevant, but in these cars, aero wash is absolutely a thing they have to watch out for. The car behind will not have the same amount of front grip as the leading car, and I think Nick Horvath knows that. He's trying to get ahead of Broomhead as quickly as possible so he doesn't burn off the fronts.
Yep, so that is going to be really, really key. These two fighting nose to tail right now. A very wide line taken by Broomhead here at the front. Third and fourth still on as well. You've got Collender there, scrapping it out with Tony Roma, looking for places, and we'll be seeing how those places will effectively go out there and change and develop over this one. The second lap of this race into the right, they come along, and a mistake there from Horvath behind means that that gap opens on out and opens out to just about 6 car lengths you would probably count at this stage. They go through 9, 10 and into 11.
And this is especially tricky with the, I think almost a tap of the tire wall there for Nick Horvath. He's struggling with the rear tires from what I can see. And in this car, it's not the usual torquey V8 that we're used to. There's a very little power on the low band of the RPM, and coming out of these slow speed corners, you're going to be in that, it almost acts like a turbocharged engine, this V8. And it can catch you out because you have nothing. You go to full power, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, as Nick Horvath makes a mistake in turn 2 again, he has lost almost 4 seconds there. Back end got around with him. I think he's overheated the rear tires there, Jake.
Yeah, I think he has as well, and he's actually, I won't think it's overheating the tyres. He just clips the curb going through turn 1, grabs a bit of grass. It's exactly the same thing that happened to him earlier on. That's just being too aggressive. He needs to dial back that line and respect turn 1 and 2. You look at it on paper, you think it's just a very easy sweeping section of road. It's not. It's a very fast entry into a piece of road which immediately flicks back onto you with a wall on the exit. Not just the wall on the exit there at turn 2 as they make their way through Strand Drive their side. It's going to be more of a case of it's how it rises up over that crest on the exit, which makes that corner difficult.
Absolutely, and it does not help if you have the tires overheated, which I think sort of helped him along there, get the back end around. But it was an excellent save. He didn't lose too much time, and most importantly, he held second place because Nicholas Collender is behind him. He's not in danger at the moment, but Collender is looking fierce there. If Nick Horvath makes another mistake, he is very likely to lose his podium positions.
It is looking very likely. We do apologise here, ladies and gentlemen, for the lack of graphics that you are seeing on screen. We've had a fault on our end. We'll be working hard to get that back to you as soon as we possibly can. But there you can see second position, Nick Horvath, then looking to try and make that charge, the 00 just in front, just making life very difficult. Most of the cars we're seeing right now are white at this stage, the default livery that they've all got. There is Collender then in third. It seems like all of his cars are applied with that same styling there, thanks to the iRacing paint shop, which has had many relevant updates through the UI as well, the new UI that is out there. But he charges himself then through turn number 5 and over towards 6 as well, the next right-hander out there on track, and he is slowly pulling away from Tony Roma at a rate of 0.9 of a second on that last lap.
Certainly something to keep an eye on, but I think Nicholas Colander might be a little bit faster than Nick Horvath. Last lap was 1:23.5 from Horvath, 1:23.1 from Colander. That might have been a little bit of that overheated tires I was talking about as Horvath slows down to bring them back into their operating range. But if Horvath keeps doing that, keeps overheating his tires, he might be in danger of being caught by Colander.
That could definitely be a danger. Hawks is back out there racing again, 1 lap down, and they've got to see behind 5th position here. Tony Roma is not safe because they can see James Doherty going through there as Broomhead again. Fastest lap, 1:20.587 out there at this stage, and Doherty then trying to keep in range. Had brought that gap down to about a second, but again, he's just clicked all on 12, and there again is Hawks struggling at turn 3. So Hawks is definitely not having himself a good evening here tonight with that one going forward, and it looks like he is again done exactly the same, all on his own as he went on the brakes, locked it up, tried to turn it in, and realizes, oh, I don't have enough room on that, there's tires.
Absolutely, and you do have an escape route. Oh, as he comes up, as Colander comes up to Gene Hoxler, he was a little bit held up, and it looks like a mirror of race 1 as Colander loses a little bit of time lapping Gene Hox there. But that does give a little advantage to Tony Roma as he gets the draft off of Gene, and he's able to slip by, coming to the end of the back straight into the 7-Eleven. Oh, Tony Roma has too much speed from the draft loops. It keeps that out of the tires, though. But this is going to cost him a lot of time as James Daughtry slips on by.
Yeah, I'd call that a forced fumble there from Tony Roma. He'll be hoping that he didn't want to make that sort of mistake, but you were seeing how he was trying to take that toe away, and it's something that we normally talk more in a NASCAR sense side, but having that dirty air affect you from behind is something that can really happen, and he looked unsettled there going into the corner.
And there's a bump offline, and he was forced offline passing Gene Hox there. And there are a couple of bumps off the racing line. It makes it very difficult to pass into, but it also makes it difficult to lap cars as well, as we see Tony Roma going past Gene Hox again. This time a little bit less flamboyantly, let's say.
I tell you what, Michael Broomhead has had not much luck with the traffic. If you saw those laps, he got the gap down to 1.9, but Horvath also had to get past Hansel Nav, and as such, the gap has opened up again to 3.4 seconds here in this race. Don't count Horvath out. He has been desperately itching for a battle out there at the front of this field, and he hasn't had that luck so far. Of course, he had that moment at turn 2 where he really had to lift off it, very nearly clobbers the wall there at 8 as well, going on through that left-hand bend, that very tricky left, and he is so desperate to get himself back into a battle. One thing he's missing out on, though, is time. Time is the big key in all of this, because they are over half distance now in this race.
And it looks like we're going to have a 12-lap race, so you're right. We are running lap 6 right now. And he is about 3 seconds off the lead, so it's not impossible, but he needs to take about a half second a lap and then pass him. So catching is one thing, passing is certainly another thing around Detroit.
Of course, the legendary Murray Walker, may he rest in peace, making that one a very much staple for all of us up here in the booth. But at least at this moment in time, it is now thinking about who can put themselves in the best possible position. We've seen those gaps open out then over the course of these few laps that we have been putting through with the Flying Husky Racing. Of course, we thank all of you for joining us here with the Global Sim Racing channel and the action that we have been able to bring you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are around the world. And this is one of the things, this is a Pacific Northwest style league, but you look at where everyone comes from and gets themselves in. We got people from Canada, a lot of Northwesters, Club Michigan, of course, Tony Roma, and of course for James Doherty Racing out of Florida. You see all over the North Americas, a lot of drivers out there racing, and this is a global sport which can unite all sorts of different creeds and colors and all the rest of it that you can bring into sim racing. It's one of the most universal outlets out there to have racing.
Absolutely. Even other continents can even race, as we see often on GSRC. We have people from Australia, people from Europe, people from North America, South America, all racing at the same time. Is genuinely a good thing to see, not separated into different servers. But as we watch Nick Colander race around here, I don't think he's being caught by James Daughtry. They're running pretty equal laps at the moment, but I think Colander may have something to give. He's pulled on, rather, Nick Horvath ahead of him has pulled on him about a couple seconds lap there. I think Colander has backed off a little bit to conserve his tires and his race a little bit. He knows he has nothing for the top two. He's trying to consolidate his third position, I believe. Oh, and as we have Hans Sanalve in the pit lane again.
Yep, so Salnav in the pits, and that is at turn 12 then the issue. And I think Roma has almost caught a clobber of that as well. Too aggressive in, grabs the wall, and Roma actually does take a hit from it. So Tony Roma might be walking wounded between now and the end of this race, and that won't be ideal then at all. Looks like has just gotten away with it. The car looks pretty much intact. So a lucky hit then, going out of turn 12. But that's one of the things you deal with here on Street Circuit Style Racing. If someone does have an incident, especially through a tight section of road, where do you go? You will funnel into the accident.
And that's part of it. You need to have a spotter who's ahead of the ball, basically, and lets you know about any incidents ahead of you, because you don't have time to sort of slow down or avoid. Once you see it, you've probably seen the many traffic jams at Long Beach, especially into the hairpin, where people just have no idea because they have about a half second between actually rounding the corner and seeing what's around them. Race car drivers have great reflexes, but they're not that good. Certainly not good enough to take advantage of the fact that these street circuits, or at least that Belle Isle, is wider than most street circuits.
Yep, it is wider than most as they charge on forward and into letter 1 and 2. We're focusing on Doherty here in 4th position. That gap now is up to about 5 seconds, a 26.3 that lap then from Doherty, who really struggled to keep everything together on that lap because he again hit the wall out of 12, which has been catching a lot of drivers out here in this Cadillac as he went in a little bit too deep, really clobbered against the tires, and now he finds himself in no man's land, 5 seconds either way. But now Todd Curtis is lap traffic now for Broomhead out there, and that is bringing Horvath back into play once again. They are on the same piece of road as they go on through, and Horvath would need something like this. There isn't going to be traffic between now and the end of the race unless something drastic happens. So for Horvath, if he wants some help, well, there's double traffic now that he's got to get himself around.
Oh, and this brings them right together. Look at this.
Oh, he's in the fence.
That's a big hit. Oh, that's a very nasty hit, especially around the front of that car where the splitter meets the bodywork. That's pushed in quite a ways. The same thing on the right rear. I think he may have some suspension damage as well.
That is not what Nick Horvath wanted, and that again is that case of dirty air effect. Of course, it's very fitting that we had an Indianapolis 500 today, which made a difference, as into the wall in front. Oh, and that's going to spin Horvath. He tried to get out, then to avoid Todd Curtis in the wall, and now you've got two in the wall, and this is going to be the most awkward point in reverse to try and get that one back going again.
Colander, he's 23 seconds back. He's coming through turn 6 now. Oh, Horvath just might get away with this because he only has 1:40 before the timer runs out and another lap after that. So if he can keep the car going, if he can keep the car rolling, and it does not look very nice to drive at the moment, he might be able to keep his second place finish. But Colander is knocking the seconds off as we go. Gap is down to 9 seconds, almost down to 8 now.
Broomhead has got away with one Salnav span in front, going through 12, and has got away without any contact at all. But Horvath now is dealing with that damage. He won't need to come in and serve any meatball flag because he is still trying to deal with that battle between now and the end of the race. So Horvath still has everything to play for. Colander closing down the gaps and the margins then. We'll be hoping that he's got enough pace to keep this one interesting between now and the end. Salnav in the pits. Horvath now 23 seconds adrift at the front of the field, and you can see his lap time hasn't been registered here at this point in time as we do start the final lap of this race, but it is 6 seconds that he has got to hold off here to Nicholas Colander in the battle of the Nicks as they go through. Your leader, meanwhile, Michael Broomhead, is having an absolutely sensational race once again, and you know that he has just been quietly keeping those laps in. He has been the one who has been able to keep that car on the island every single stage of the way and has been flying with everything possible at this moment in time. So now what can you do with 2 corners to go? What more can you say? It's going to be close on time towards the line, but this is going to be with 7, 6 and 5 very close to the line. The flag will come out then as we make that charge through. Michael Broomhead, a clean sweep, picks up the win overall then, and does so 15 minutes and an added second on top of that. It looks like Horvath is going to be able to hold on, but 2 more corners. He's done very well side to manage the damage.
And look, you can see in the background there, Nick Corollary is pushing hard, gets the tail out, trying to catch the wounded car of Nick Horvath, but Horvath comes around, turn 13, coming to the line. He can see the checkered flag in front of him, and despite his damaged car, he's going to hold on and finish second where he started.
So a good job to hold on to that for Nick Horvath. Colander not close enough in the end. A good drive as well from James Doherty there in 4th position. Kept it close, kept it honest there with Colander, and ultimately you would say that is a strong drive as pretty much everyone goes through. And if you take a little look, it's going to be checkers or wreckers then after as they go through and work out. There's a few donuts being done then in the end by Broomhead. So let's get official confirmation then, as everybody has crossed the line that has needed to. It is going to be Broomhead who has picked up the victory overall. 15 minutes and a second. We didn't go on to a 12th lap. It was 11 laps only, and picks up the win by 29.8, almost half a minute in the end over Nick Horvath in 2nd position. Nicholas Colander then gets 3rd with James Doherty in 4th position, and 5th belonging to Tony Roma, 41 seconds adrift. The final 3 drivers, Todd Curtis 1 lap down, and then 3 laps down each for Hans Salnav and Gene Hawkes, making it the 8 then that have made that progress over. We are going to have this opportunity then to bring in a couple more drives for interviews. And you know what? We're going to bring in some of the drivers we haven't had a chance to speak to here today. First and foremost, we're going to grab the driver who finished home in 2nd position, Nick Horvath, alongside us. Nick, that was a case of a race where you were trying so hard to stay up there with Broomhead in the race lead, but ultimately a couple of mistakes here and there, and a lap to forget, and somehow you still managed to hold on for that 2nd place.
Yeah, it was really difficult, to be honest with you. I had a lot of pace. It's just there was the odd mistake every couple laps that really held me back, and then once I had to try and come up to lap traffic, it just went away from me.
Yeah, it certainly did. And, well, you did a very good job to bring it all together. How difficult is it to drive a car which is dealing with so much damage? I'm sure you had a little bit of, I would believe, left-hand side down as you were going down the straights. How difficult is it to manage as you go on through?
You know what? The first lap, I thought I was done. My wheel's at 90 degrees to the left, so honestly, it was more or less oh boy, I don't think I'm going to make it. But when I heard it was about 1 lap to go, I decided I'd give her. And that 2nd lap, for some reason, the wheel just straightened out. Everything went fine, and it felt like I could absolutely manage at least 3/4 pace.
Well, 3/4 pace was more than good enough. And in terms of what you were looking at here tonight, there have been a couple issues through turn 1 and turn 2. Just how difficult has this Belle Isle circuit been here today as a challenge for the drivers here in this league? Because you look at a track like this, and this isn't necessarily the most forgiving place in the world.
No, I've raced here a couple series now, and it doesn't really matter what you drive. The curbs are exceptionally unforgiving. If you hit them the wrong way, it's pretty much going to shoot you in the wall. The track is incredibly bumpy, so it's really hard to get the power out once you come out of some certain corners, especially the last couple corners. It's just, it's really a hard track to manage power.
And, of course, then a hard track to manage power, but still managing a 2nd position overall. Nick, before we let you go, shout out sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank.
Really like to thank the team back at Britannia. Everyone's awesome to deal with. Also, my one sponsor, Vitiated Mob, unfortunately wasn't running their livery, but big thank you to them for supporting me all this way.
No worries at all. Nick Horvath then picking up 2nd position in that race. And Sly, I believe you've had a wander down the paddock to find our next interview.
Absolutely. We are looking at, well, we'll bring in James Daughtry. Do you have a copy?
Yeah, what's up?
Well, welcome to the booth. Congratulations on your 4th place finish. 1 off the podium, unfortunately, but a very interesting first lap for you, getting passed by Nick Colander, but then taking advantage of some trouble from Tony Roma. Tell us about your race.
I just did the best I could. I've never driven this car up until yesterday. It's an awesome car. I'm definitely going to work on it some more. And it was just a great race.
Definitely sounded like it, but we saw a lot of people sort of fall off the track, so to speak, in terms of attrition. Were you kind of taking it easy, kind of playing your cards right, waiting for some mistakes up the road? Because we saw, especially on the second place, Nick Horvath got a little bit into the wall there and had to give up his run for the win. Did you have anything for Colander?
I was hunting him down, and I just overcooked it a little too much into turn 12, I think, and just tapped the wall, and it was enough to give him a gap. I just couldn't reel him back in.
Unfortunate, but that's the way of street circuit racing. Before we let you go here, is there anybody else you want to thank or shout out to?
Yeah, I just want to thank Flying Husky for putting on the race, and my team, Britannia iSports, and yeah.
Well, thanks for coming out today, James, and congratulations on your 4th place finish.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Michael Broomhead, our winner, and he has caught up with Jake.
I certainly have. Mike, we were hoping it was going to be the first of many, and in the end, it turned out it was to be that case. You staved off the challenges early, you were kept honest through the opening laps, but then the mistakes started to open up, and here you are, 30 seconds down the road, and nobody in a month of Sundays to catch you.
Yeah, it was obviously a good feeling. You know what? Credit to Nick. This is the first time he's raced this car, and through the streets of Detroit, he was fastest, honestly. It was lucky that I got a good lap in qualifying, just to put myself in front and then just held it. But, I mean, he was strong. He was coming at me. I was starting to lose a little, and then obviously the lap traffic came in. So, lucky for me, I guess.
Lucky for you, you guess. Of course, how difficult is it, maybe, or how confident did you feel knowing that you had the ability to stave off challenges into turn 3, for example, with the dirty air effects being more prevalent in this Dallara P217?
Yeah, it's something to think about, obviously, and cut the angles down, a very tight course as well. So defending is a little bit easier on this track than some others. But it's a car I've driven a lot. I've done 2 24-hour races in it. So I was quite comfortable with it. And the track itself is something I love to drive. So I was fairly confident, but again, it was fast. So it was all about staying in front of him.
Yes, exactly. So what's next then on the agenda for Mike Broomhead? How important has this race been, or these 2 races been for you to gather up some momentum and some confidence going into your next rounds?
Yeah, so we got Flying Husky on Tuesday in the F3 car, and my teammate Jake Hexton has utterly obliterated us since we got in there. So I've been looking to hunt him down, getting closer and closer. And in the PRL Indy Pro, we also do that. I'm a little bit far behind in the points. I'm doing quite badly, but I mean, Nick and a few of our other AM drivers are doing really well. So really, it's just it's just it's momentum. It's a positive, and it's nice to win one finally.
And to generate that momentum is certainly going to be key. Mike Broomhead there picking up back-to-back race victories overall. Very quickly, I'm going to bring in Todd Curtis into the conversation. Of course, he's done a lot of work, not only behind the scenes here with the Flying Huskies, but on top of that, has been out there racing today. Todd, let's just get the initial question out of the way. The racing for you, 2 finishes then in P6, just all about getting a little bit of consistency out there and feeling the flow of race. Todd, do we have a copy of you, buddy? It seems, at least for the most part, we are not going to be able to get that opportunity to talk to Todd at the moment. Hopefully, we will get the chance to, but that does not seem then like it is likely at this point in time. So, Si, final thoughts then as we bring our proceedings over towards a close here at Belle Isle.
Well, one common thing that I've seen is a lot of these guys are getting into this car trial by fire, so to speak. This is not the first place I would run this car personally, but credit to them for doing it and doing it as well as they have, especially with a lot of these drivers being new to both prototypes and Belle Isle at the same time. So certainly an interesting race. I'm looking forward to future events.
And of course, future events come up on Tuesday with us here at the Global Sim Racing channel. If you haven't had the opportunity to do so, now is the time. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content brought to you here by the team at the wonderful Global Sim Racing channel. From everyone who's been getting it done here behind the scenes, from, of course, the Flying Huskies, from the likes of XSplit, Appgeneer.in, Hammer and Chisel Inc., and then you've got, of course, the music that you have heard over by June Lalonde. There's been some incredible action brought to you here with GSRC. From the team as well, getting it done, Dougie Beard's cameras, piloted by Zach Johnson, Cyandra alongside here, and myself, Jake Sperry. This has been a race for the Flying Huskies, which is enough to get themselves into the mix, get themselves a feel and a flair for what is out there on the iRacing service. We had some good, strong racing throughout as they went on through and looked to try and make that progress as they push forward. So that will be in the minds as they look forward for Tuesday and get themselves forward. So hopefully we will get that in the books. But there is sometimes more that comes to racing as we get ourselves moving forward into the mix. And of course, this is the point where we do pay our respects. Race in peace, Jason de Pasquier. Of course, we'll see you, of course, in the stars very, very soon.